The problem with being a minor power, Major Ethan Vance often thought, was that nobody took you seriously until it was too late for either side. For years, the Galactic Union had tolerated Earth, seeing it as a quaint, messy, and technologically backward planet, like a child playing with complex machinery it didn't fully understand. That perception, rooted in smug arrogance, was about to cost them everything. But first, it would cost Earth its civilization. Ethan stood on the bridge of the Aegis, a small, outdated patrol corvette, its hull barely reinforced civilian-grade plating. They were part of Watch Station Delta, a useless perimeter of defense vessels meant more for optics than actual security. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the sudden, cold silence of the tactical board. It happened without warning. Not a slow approach, not a tense negotiation, but an instantaneous, massive arrival. Hundreds of vessels, blocky and menacing, painted in the dull gray black of the Krellian hegemony, dropped out of jump space simultaneously. They didn't arrive in a single coordinated fleet, but dozens of fleets, appearing above every human colony and, most critically, right above Earth itself. The sky turned from the comforting blue to a dense, terrifying swarm of alien steel. Lieutenant Kai Miller, a young woman whose face was usually etched with bored sarcasm, stared at her console, her jaw slack. "Major," she stammered, her voice thin. They just materialized. They're everywhere. This isn't an invasion. It's an extermination." The automated warning system of the Aegis screamed. The Krellian command ships, vast triangular wedges of metal, didn't bother with verbal demands or ultimatums. They simply opened fire. The orbital defense platforms, the scattered, low-power railgun stations that were humanity's only long-range defense, vanished in puffs of green and white light. They didn't even get a single shot off. The Krellian weaponry, designed to slice through capital ships, carved through the tiny human platforms like hot knives through water. Ethan gripped the command chair's armrests until his knuckles turned white. "Report, Kai. What are the fleet movements?" "They're firing saturation salvos, Major, targeting every major coastal city, power grid, and military base. Our atmosphere is choked with plasma fire, and the orbital defense stations are gone, all of them, 0 remaining." Kai's hands flew across the board, but the data was useless. The information was too much, too fast, too catastrophic. A brilliant, sickening flare erupted high above North America, visible even from their low Earth orbit position. It was too large to be an energy strike. It looked like an entire section of the planet's crust had been ripped open. The planet, our home, shimmered under the force of the impact. "That was the Pacific Command Center," Ethan muttered, the words tasting like ash. They knew exactly where to hit. This was planned for years. The Aegis shook violently as something large and fast passed nearby. Shrapnel pinged off their shields, which flickered dangerously. They knew their orders: hold the line. But what line was there to hold? The Krellians' Operation Iron Fist wasn't a battle. It was an execution. A voice, heavily distorted by static and trauma, cut across the main channel. The last transmission from the surface. "This is Sierra Base 5. We are under heavy assault. Ground forces requesting tactical nuke deployment. Repeat, requesting... God, they're inside the perimeter. The air is burning. Tell them we fought. Tell them we..." The transmission cut out with a final, flat, high-pitched whine. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the finality of the sound. He looked at Kai, whose expression had frozen in pure shock. "Status of our jump drive," he ordered, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "Charged to 70%, Major. We can make a short hop." 70% is enough, Ethan said. "We are not fighting a battle here. We are preserving the seed. We are the eyes that saw what they did. We are the memory." He activated the external comms. "All remaining friendly vessels, this is Major Vance of the Aegis. This theater is lost. Operation Iron Fist is overwhelming. Initiate escape sequence blackout. Scatter into the deep dark. Do not engage. Preserve life. We will find each other later." It was a desperate, unofficial order, given over a channel he knew the Krellian ships were already jamming. He didn't know if anyone heard it. "Pilot, execute jump sequence. Minimum distance, maximum dispersal vector." The Aegis screamed again as the jump drive charged the final 30%, straining its civilian wiring. With a shuddering roar, the small corvette tore itself free of Earth's orbit, leaving behind the hellish spectacle. As they jumped into the relative safety of fold space, Ethan caught one last glimpse of Earth, a small blue marble, now wreathed in smoke, silent under the watchful, triumphant fleets of the Krellian hegemony. His heart was not broken. It was hardening, slowly turning into something cold and resolute. They had taken his home. They had won the first battle. But the war, Ethan knew, with absolute certainty, had just begun. It had been weeks since the sky burned. Down here, deep below the charred mountains where old California used to be, the silence was the worst thing. It was a sterile, cold quiet that felt heavier than the weight of the rock above them. This subterranean complex, built originally as a scientific archive, was now the black heart of humanity's defiance. It was here, surrounded by the remnants of global data and power systems, that the new war was being planned. Dr. Maya Reyes ran a tired hand over the surface of a steel table. On the monitor before her, a new simulation flickered. It showed the latest Krellian patrol routes across the ruined continents. They were arrogant. The aliens flew their ships low and slow, hunting survivors like vermin. Every hour brought new reports of successful alien hunts and more lines added to Maya's growing casualty list. She was supposed to be studying the subtle language of the Galactic Union, finding ways to talk to them. Now, she was finding ways to kill them. The shift had been brutal, carving away her gentle scholar's nature and replacing it with a hard, tactical core. Chief Engineer Caleb Johnson walked up behind her, holding 2 mugs of terrible, recycled synthetic coffee. His jumpsuit was perpetually stained with grease and dust. Caleb was a man who understood things through how they fit together, through torque and voltage. The sight of his world being dismantled had not made him weep. It had made him obsessed with rebuilding a way to fight. "They just finished sorting the wreckage from Sierra Base 5, Caleb said, his voice low. "Not much left. They found the transmission logs. That Major Vance, the one who gave the blackout order, he made it out. Few others did too. Scattered." Maya took the mug, the warmth a small comfort. "Good. We need the pilots, we need the memory, but we don't need their methods, Caleb." She gestured at the holographic map showing the slow, methodical grid search the Krellians were running over the Pacific. "They are too big, too numerous, and too confident. If we fight them with the ships we have left, we just give them more targets." "So we don't use ships," Caleb countered, already understanding her cold logic. Maya nodded slowly. "We use ghosts. Do you remember the old theoretical warp physics papers, the stuff the Union called fantasy? The jump drive that didn't just enter fold space, but temporarily became it? The one that caused the catastrophic failure in '98? Project Phoenix, the abandoned phase drive. It destabilizes space for a nanosecond, allowing for a jump within a system, not just across systems. It's completely undetectable and unstable. We couldn't stabilize it for transport. But what if we don't stabilize it for transport? What if we harness that instability? The momentary collapse of the local space-time fabric. What if that is the weapon? Caleb set his coffee down. His usual practical demeanor was replaced by a look of sheer, terrifying focus. He walked over to a shielded workbench covered in complex wiring and glowing crystal regulators. This was the work he had been secretly doing since the attack. Salvaging, reverse engineering alien tech, and finding the flaws in human failures. It will take everything we have, Caleb warned. We'll have to strip every non-essential system from the few civilian vessels we can retrieve from the junkyard. They'll be paper-thin, unarmed by conventional means. If they get hit once, they are gone. They won't get hit because the aliens won't see them coming. We give the pilots one job: jump into the middle of their formations, use the drive's inherent collapse field to punch a hole straight through their shielding, and then jump out before they even register the attack. We don't need a battle fleet. We need a swarm of hornets. Caleb finally smiled, but it was a grim, mirthless expression that chilled Maya. The Krellian ships use a complex layered shield matrix. It relies on predictable energy signatures. A spontaneous, contained space collapse, that will bypass everything. Will turn a forgotten failure into the galaxy's most efficient murder weapon. They stood there, the woman of strategy and the man of engineering, staring at the blueprints for humanity's dark rebirth. They were no longer fighting for peace or coexistence. They were building a tool of absolute, surgical wrath, forged in the ashes of their home. Project Phoenix was the only thing that mattered. It was time for the hunters to become the hunted. The first part of their escape had been survival. The second part was commitment to total war. The air in the deep cavern beneath the mountains smelled of scorched metal and raw ozone. It was a factory of last resort, a place where defeat was being reforged into a terrifying kind of hope. Chief Engineer Caleb Johnson and his teams worked around the clock, fueled by grim purpose and synthetic caffeine. They were performing surgery on civilian ships. The fleet was not made of warships. It was made of salvaged freighters, old passenger transports, and rugged deep space mining rigs. Caleb stripped them bare, taking away everything that wasn't vital. The luxury cabins, the heavy cargo stabilizers, even the non-essential life support systems, all went into a scrap heap. What remained was a thin, fragile skeleton, a bare cockpit, and a massive, terrifying new heart, the Phoenix Drive. These vessels, now paper-thin and almost defenseless against a conventional laser, were christened the Ghost Ships. The Phoenix Drive, a contained space collapse mechanism, was installed at the center. It glowed with a soft, unstable blue light. Every time it charged, the entire vessel vibrated, threatening to shake itself apart. Caleb knew that if one of these ships took a single missile hit, it would vaporize instantly. But he also knew the Krellian wouldn't see them coming. Weeks into this desperate conversion work, a small, battered escape pod drifted into the hidden complex's landing bay. Out stepped Major Ethan Vance. He was gaunt, his uniform torn, but the look in his eyes was fixed and cold. He had scattered the remnants of his defense crew across the void, fulfilling his duty to save the seed. Now he had returned to the only place left to fight. He was immediately led to tactical specialist Chloe Davis. Chloe was slight, intensely focused, and possessed the ruthless clarity of a hawk. She was younger than Ethan, but her authority over the surviving pilots was absolute. She didn't offer him a welcoming smile or an apology for the state of the world. She just pointed to a simulator rig. "You're late, Major." Chloe said, her voice sharp and devoid of emotion. "Your designation is now Commander. These are your rules." Ethan looked at the projections on the screen. It wasn't a diagram of formations or flanking maneuvers. It was a single, clean line showing a human ship jumping directly into the engine room of a Krellian dreadnought, causing a massive internal explosion, and then jumping out instantly. "The doctrine has changed," Chloe explained, her voice steady. "We don't fight their ships. We don't engage. We don't hold the line. We are not soldiers in this war. We are delivery systems for vengeance. Your ships are invisible, but they are glass. If you hesitate for even a third of a second, the Krellian sensors will catch the residual trace of the Phoenix drive and you are dead. The goal is destruction of command and control. No mercy, no survivors. We teach them fear." Ethan, a pilot trained in the old ways of honor and measured force, felt a chill. This was a doctrine born not of military strategy, but of pure, cold hatred. But as he looked around at the faces of the young pilots, survivors of the orbital massacre, he saw only fierce acceptance. They had no illusions. The training began. It was brutal. The pilot spent hours in the simulators practicing hyper-precise jump calculations. It was a high-speed ballet of death. The simulator was programmed to punish any delay. If the pilot failed to jump out immediately after activating the weaponized drive, the screen would flash red, simulating their own vessel's annihilation in the resulting space collapse field. "You are aiming for the bridge, the engine room, the reactor core. Aim for the soft, essential parts. Forget the shields, forget the guns. You jump, you collapse space, you jump out. 3 seconds total." Ethan took his turn on the simulator. He was fast, but his instincts kept telling him to fire conventional weapons, to rely on shields. He died 3 times in the first hour. He finally understood. This was not flying. It was a focused, suicidal act of sabotage, repeated 11 times over by a fleet of ghost ships. Finally, after days of grinding, high-stress practice, the ghost fleet was ready. 11 ships, stripped to their cores, waiting in the launch tubes. Maya Reyes provided the final target, the main Krellian staging hub at the abandoned Alpha Centauri colony. It was where the enemy kept their fuel, their supplies, and their primary fleet commander. Ethan walked onto the bridge of his flagship, a battered mining vessel he had reluctantly named the Unbowed. He looked at the controls, knowing that the next time he pressed the jump button, it would be a choice between victory and total oblivion. The silence of the command center was replaced by the low hum of the Phoenix drive charging. He was ready to teach the galaxy the cost of underestimating Earth. The journey to the Alpha Centauri staging hub was long, silent, and tense. 11 ships, the entire Ghost Fleet, moved with their engines barely ticking over, relying on passive sensor evasion. On the bridge of the Unbowed, Commander Ethan Vance sat strapped into the pilot's seat, the cold metal of the Phoenix drive's activation paddle beneath his right hand. He didn't speak, and neither did anyone else. The air was thick with the weight of expectation. When they finally arrived at the edge of the system, Maya Reyes' tactical plan showed itself to be brutally elegant. The Krellian forces were enormous, dozens of supply vessels. Heavily armored dreadnoughts and fast patrol craft circled the massive central logistics platform. Their formation was designed to stop any conventional attack hours before it reached the core. But they were looking outward, not inward. "We have confirmation of the primary command dreadnought," reported Lieutenant Kai Miller, her voice a low hum in the comms, echoing the intense focus from their training. "It's the Iron Hand, right at the center." "Target designation locked," Ethan confirmed. "Chloe's orders. The center group hits the logistics platform and the command ship. The flank groups target the fuel depots and fighter bays. Remember the drill. 1 jump in, 1 activation, 1 jump out. 3 seconds of terror, then gone." Ethan felt a strange calm wash over him. All the fear and frustration he had held since watching Earth burn finally coalesced into pure, controlled focus. He gripped the paddle. "Ghost Fleet, execute jump sequence," he ordered. The ships did not accelerate. They simply vanished. The experience of the Phoenix jump was not like the slow slip into fold space. It was a blinding, sickening lurch, a nanosecond where reality seemed to tear itself apart and reform instantly. One moment, the Unbowed was in deep space. The next, it was inside the primary Krellian formation, less than a kilometer from the colossal Iron Hand. Krellian sensors, designed to track predictable warp signatures, registered nothing. The Krellian bridge was in chaos. Alarms blared, showing energy spikes with no source. Before the alien commander could even react, Ethan slammed the activation paddle. The Phoenix drive, now weaponized, unleashed its instability. It didn't fire a beam or a missile. Instead, it created a spontaneous, localized vacuum, a tiny, contained collapse of space-time directly against the Iron Hand's triple-layered shielding. The shields, which could shrug off a nuclear blast, were designed to manage energy. They had no defense against the sudden physical absence of space itself. The dreadnought's hull near the impact zone buckled inward with a flash of intense white light. The shield matrix failed catastrophically. The hull cracked open, exposing the vital, soft systems. "Jump out!" Ethan screamed into his mic, his entire ship rattling violently from the energy discharge. The Unbowed vanished again. 3 seconds had passed from arrival. Across the staging hub, 10 other ghost ships executed their own strikes with brutal precision. A vast fuel depot exploded in a silent, expanding ball of fire. 2 engine rooms on separate cruisers were instantly turned inside out. The Krellian fleet, which had been perfectly organized seconds before, dissolved into confusion. Their command ship, the Iron Hand, was critically crippled. Its reactor compromised. The chaos that followed was the exact result of Chloe Davis's doctrine. The Krellian ships, designed for large, slow fleet actions, could not track the invisible, near-instantaneous human attackers. They began firing wildly at anything that moved, including their own ships. Ethan's Unbowed, safely back in jump space, received the raw data feeds. The Krellian commander on the Iron Hand was broadcasting a desperate, panicked message across all Union channels. "Warning! Unknown enemy attacking! They bypass shields! Invisible! They are ghosts! They are not human! They are devils!" Ethan watched the data stream, a slow, grim smile spreading across his face. The Krellian forces were routing, fleeing the sector they had thought secure. They had come to Earth with arrogance and certainty. Now, they were leaving in terror and shame.
The defeat of the Krellian forces at the Alpha Centauri staging hub was not just a military setback. It was a psychological earthquake across the entire Galactic Union. The Krellian ships, paralyzed by fear and confusion after the loss of the Iron Hand, withdrew entirely from the solar system. Their occupation of Earth had lasted only a few weeks, but the cost was measured in centuries of galactic peace lost. The blue marble was still scarred, but it was free. A month later, Commander Ethan Vance and Dr. Maya Reyes stood in the vast, polished hall of the Central Neutrality Pact Station, a place known simply as the Gathering Point. They wore plain, practical uniforms, heavily contrasted by the silks, scales, and ornate armor of the alien representatives. The atmosphere was no longer one of tolerance, but of palpable, thick fear. The council was comprised of dozens of species, but the 3 major groups, the large, chitinous Drael, the slender, nervous Xylos, and the slow, calculating Voron, were clearly in charge of the proceedings. The speaker, a Xylos known only as Representative Cirque, cleared its throat, a dry, clicking sound that betrayed its immense nervousness. "Human representatives," Cirque began, its voice wavering slightly. "The Krellian hegemony has withdrawn its forces. We demand an immediate explanation for the technology used in the Alpha Centauri attack. The nature of these ghost ships is a clear violation of the Deep Space Treaty." Maya Reyes stepped forward, her small stature belying the sheer force of her technical authority. Her voice was calm and steady. The technology is human. It is a localized space-time collapse mechanism built from salvaged parts and Krellian designs. As for the treaty, sir, she looked directly at the Xylos. The treaty was already violated when your union stood by and watched the Krellian attempt to sterilize our home planet. A Drael delegate, a being of immense size, slammed a clawed hand on the polished table. We did not sanction the attack. The Krellian acted without Union approval. And yet, Ethan interjected, his voice cutting through the noise, you allowed them to blockade Earth. You considered us a minor disposable species. You thought your rules applied to people who had nothing left to lose. You were wrong. Ethan walked toward the center of the room. He did not raise his voice, but his intensity commanded attention. He looked at every species present, making sure they understood. The Krellian believed Earth was weak. They tried to exterminate us. They succeeded only in uniting us. We have rebuilt our defensive capability not for protection, but for surgical retribution. We call it Project Phoenix. He paused, letting the name sink in. We have 2 terms for the Galactic Union, Maya continued, standing beside him, the perfect balance of intellect and threat. First, full and immediate reparations for the damage caused to Earth's infrastructure, paid by the Krellian under Union guarantee. Second, and most important, a new celestial mandate. Representative Cirque leaned forward, a look of desperate confusion on his face. A mandate? Humanity is demanding a mandate? Yes, Ethan confirmed, his gaze unflinching. The new celestial mandate is simple. Earth is sovereign. We will not join your union. We will not sign your treaties. Any vessel, any species, any force that points a weapon at Earth or any human colony again will be considered an immediate existential threat. And we will not wait for your council to vote or your fleets to mobilize. The Ghost Fleet is no longer just 11 ships. It is being mass-produced in secret locations across the void. The moment any hostile action is detected, a ghost ship will jump directly into the aggressor's bridge, bypass all shields, and initiate a spontaneous space collapse, ensuring instant, total annihilation. There will be no warning, there will be no negotiation, only swift, invisible death. The threat was unprecedented. The idea of undetectable, unblockable assassination ships operating across the galaxy made all their massive, slow-moving dreadnoughts obsolete. The Voron delegate, the one known for its cold calculus, slowly tapped a surface. This is a declaration of galaxy-wide terrorism, human. No, Ethan replied simply. This is a declaration of sovereignty. We were forced to fight with the only tool we had, the absolute resolve of a species defending its last life raft. You taught us that strength matters more than peace. We learned the lesson well. Accept the terms or experience the wrath of the ghost ships firsthand. The meeting broke down into urgent, whispered conferences among the alien species. They had no choice. To continue the conflict was to risk having their own centers of power instantly wiped out. The galaxy, having united against Earth, now bowed to the fear Earth inspired. As Ethan and Maya left the opulent hall, the alien faces turned away, unable to meet their eyes. Humanity, reborn from fire, was now the new, feared power in the galaxy. The siege of Blue Marble had failed, not because of superior technology, but because of humanity's simple, terrifying refusal to die. They had lost their world, but in doing so, they had gained their destiny.